Hello, today is September 21st, 2011. My name is Elliot Franklin. I'm 38 years old, and I'm here with my grandmother, and her name is
Ermal Vinegar, Ermal Adelia Vinegar, and I'm 87 years old. I was born July the 30th, 1924. Let me see I grew up on the south side. My mother's name is Orinda Beatty Pettiford Miller. She was married to Walter Gill Miller from Gallatin, Tennessee. And his father was named Alonzo Miller, and he lived to be 98. He died in January, I think, 1941. And we lived on what you would call a little farm. We had one cow. We had chickens. We had a few hogs. And I had to milk the cow, which I didn't particularly like. I had to churn butter. My father made a churn for us. And we had the best butter. And during the week, we made bread. And lots of times when we come home from school, we'd have hot bread, jelly, and fresh butter. And the worst thing that happened to me was when my father told my mother that he wasn't going to have three girls who didn't know how to cook. And I was playing horseshoe, and my mother called me in and said, "It's time for you to learn how to cook." And I had to make a strawberry pie. I was so mad I wouldn't eat none of it. And they told me that was the best pie in the world. And I'll never know what my first pie was like. And lots of times we'd have dried fruit, and we'd have dried apples, and we'd have fried pies made in a number 8 skillet, a two to a skillet, half moon pies, and we'd have fresh milk and fried apple pies. And we killed our hogs in the November. That was quite a feat. The men in the neighborhood would come and help because the hogs weighed around about 300 to 400 pounds, and that was just too heavy for one man. And certain ones want certain parts of the hog. Of course, we kept the hind parts, which was the ham, and a lot of the fellows would want what they call lights, and that would be the heart, lungs, and kidneys. Then you'd have hog head cheese, which was out of sight. Then my mother would render out the fat and she would put water with the fat and render out the fat. And we'd have lard, and we cook with lard. And nothing tastes better than chicken fried with lard. Now you can't hardly buy lard. So we had a pretty good time, and we had plenty of food. I thought it was plenty. And we had 2 pear trees, and we had 2 apple trees, and we had plum trees, and we would grow a garden in the spring. And my brother and I would see who got the most worms. We'd dig up worms just for the fun of it and count them. Poor worms. We probably killed them all anyway. And we'd plant corn and green and beans in that little patch of land down the street that was empty, and we'd plant one grain of corn and 2 grains of bean seed. And of course that meant for the beans to grow up on the corn stalks. And we'd have tomatoes. We'd have to plant tomatoes, and we'd have okra. And we also had to go out there and take them big old tomato worms off of tomatoes, which seems to come every year with tomatoes. We planted Irish potatoes, and we had to get the bugs off of the Irish potatoes. There's a little bug that goes along with the Irish potato. And we planted sweet potatoes, which had to be planted by the certain light of the moon, they said. Certain times of the moon was the best thing. And then we can our fruits and vegetables in the spring, or fall rather. We'd can tomatoes, and we'd have what we call before the frost. We'd have green tomatoes, and we'd grind them up and season them and make what we call cha-cha. And we put that on our beans in the wintertime, which was out of sight. And let me see. Well, I had 3 brothers and 2 sisters. Walter Maurice was the oldest. He was born 1917. And my sister Ervinia Estelle, she was born 1918. And then there was Miriam Orinda. She was born 1922. And then there was Joseph. No, Miriam was born 1920. And then Joseph was born 1922. And I was born 1924. And Helen and Henry, the twins, who were deceased, didn't live any. Henry died the day of birth, and Helen died on my birthday that year, 1927. And that was Henry Lewis and Helen Aletha. Then my mother had my baby brother, Herbert, January the 5th, 1930. And he was born in the hospital, which was most amazing at that particular time. And I was supposed to look out and see to it while my mother was gone to the hospital, make out and see to that every one of the other kids did the right thing and didn't do nothing wrong. I was a spy. Well, they was going to fix the old spy for going to tell on them. They heated up the old coal stove in the kitchen and had the pipe red hot every day and said they was going to roast me. And they would sharpen the knives, and the knives, they were so sharp I could see them glisten. And so when my mother came home from giving birth to Herbert, I didn't tell her a thing. I was so glad to see her. I run to her and snotted all over her fur coat. I was going to quit. Oh, my goodness. Oh, shoot. Yeah, they sharpen them knives every day. And the old coal stove pipe would be red hot all the way up. Just one we hadn't set the house on the fire. He said, "You gonna tell on us?" And my sister Miriam had a habit of making candy. And as soon as my mother would go someplace, like go downtown, just as soon as she turned the corner, we'd go in that kitchen and get in that sugar and stuff and make candy. So I guess she knew we was doing that. So one time we made candy and it was hot. She had put pepper in the vinegar. Oh my goodness. That was the end of us making candy. But I guess we had a pretty good time. Maurice liked to go to the 500 races and the Kentucky Derby. And he worked at International Harvester, and Joseph worked at the International Harvester, and Ervinia sold insurance, and Miriam was a maid, and me, I was doing a little bit of everything. And let me see what else. And Herbie worked on the railroad. But we all made it out of there. I guess we did a bit. And we go to church on Sunday. I never got, one of the worst whippings I got was not getting ready in time to go to church on Sunday. I was polishing my shoes. They was polished all right. Oh, my.
Yeah, what were your parents like?
What was my parents like? Pretty much strict. My father worked on Sundays, and he would come home with the new Sunday paper and read us the funnies. And he would be chewing gum, and I was the lucky one to get the chewing gum that he was chewing on. Oh, Lord. I'd run to him and get the chewing gum first. A hot dog. And my mother was a housewife, naturally with 6 children. And she did the cooking and the washing of the clothes. And we had to pump water. We had to heat our water on the stove, on the kitchen stove. And we did a lot of clothes on the washboard. And my father fixed up the wash machine so it would be run by electricity. And that was his little invention. But you had to sit there and shift the gears for it. Of course, now you don't have to shift gears. I don't know. We had chickens too. Of course, the neighbors managed to tear open the back of the chicken house and steal a chicken. And one of the girls told me the other day, said, "Yeah, we stole your parents' chickens, and we stole the corn on the end of the road at the back row. So we stole a lot of that food." And I thought to myself, that's Doreen's auntie. We dug up the other day. Yeah, she told me that she stole our chickens, and we blamed Rhodey Rim for stealing them chickens, and Rhodey Rim wasn't stealing all of them. And my best girlfriend was Regine Mills. She was born July the 2nd, and she in 1924, and she died in 1900. She was 77 years old when she passed. And Regine blackmailed me because I give a little boy some candy. Harold McPherson. He was good looking as all get out. And she saw me give this boy candy. And she said, "I'm going to tell Miss Miller." So I didn't want her to tell her. So she blackmailed me to all my little pennies in my piggy bank. Then she told it anyway. Yeah, we would go to church 2 or 3 times on Sunday.
Oh, wow.
We'd even go across the railroad track to another church. We walk. We caught the streetcar and walk across the railroad tracks and stuff like that. Oh, my. Oh.
How did you and my grandfather Franklin meet?
How do we meet? Oh. Well, his uncle was working there at 12th and West Street at the Siegel grocery store. And he was standing over there talking to his uncle, and I was standing up on the other side waiting on the bus to go home from school. And I guess he cleared his voice, and I turned around and looked, and he looked at me and smiled and nodded his head and grinned. And so, "Yeah, you are mine." And so he asked my girlfriend, Bertha Harper, "You know that girl?" And she said, "Yeah, that's Ermal Miller. I want to meet her." I told her I didn't want to meet him. But the next day we walked down to the Walker Building, and he followed us. And that's when Bertha Harper introduced me to your grandfather, Grandfather Sylvester. But I was guaranteed a date on every Sunday. Grandpa Sylvester was definitely my date for Sunday. I want a Sunday kind of love. He worked at the Sentinel printing place, making a few pennies. That was his little job. And he dressed, he dressed. Zoot suit and reed pleat, big hat, the whole bit, sharp. And Mattie was at the same school. Mattie was a valedictorian. Great Aunt Mattie was valedictorian. And she went on to be a school teacher. She went to Ball State College and graduated from there. And she taught at Washington High School up until they just told her she had to go, I think. And then she married Clarence Johnson. and he was from Muncie, and they had two children, Lester and Raymond. And then there was Dorothy. She married a fellow by the name of Maine Blow, and she had Sylvester Blow. And then there was me. I was married to Sylvester Franklin, Sylvester Thomas Franklin, and I had Darrell. His mother was named Flossie Woods Franklin, and his father was named Julius Alexander Franklin. His mother and his father was a minister. And Uncle Thomas was the last one of the Franklins to pass. There was Ted Franklin and Julius Franklin. Oh, golly, Ted, Julius. Most of them went by nicknames. Clarence, I can't remember all the Franklin's names. There's about 5 boys and 2 girls. Lucille was skinny, and Susie was fat. She married to Herschel. What was Herschel's last name? Anyway.
These would all been my grandfather's aunts and uncles. Okay.
How come I can't remember all them Franklin's boys' names? Thomas, Clarence, Theodore, one called Ted, one called White Top. Oh, Darrell could name them all for you. Well, Darrell's you got an auntie named Marie. Marie, she married Julian Hayes, and she had 2 daughters, Mariah and Amber. Well, that's a Duke's mixture of things I've given you. Well, anyway, your grandmother on my side had 17 brothers and sisters. I think it was 11 girls and 10 boys. Is that enough? And, and we'd had the family reunion the 3rd Sunday in August in Marion, Indiana, which was a very special day. We would be getting dressed, buying shoes, getting our hair done. Everybody was on their best. And we'd ride up in my father's car, and we'd have crackers and cheese and bananas to keep us from getting hungry on the way up. It would take us about 3 hours to get there, and we'd leave before the sun up in August. And it would take us about 3 hours to get to Marion. Now it only takes you an hour. Yeah. Oh, and my grandfather, he had horses, cows, and they had green gage plum trees. And I thought that was the best trees. And they had chickens, pigs, a whole bit, horses. Now on Saturday he would hitch up the horse to the buggy and go to town and buy some of the specials for the week. And Now Grandma Pettiford, she had some crackers in a jar. I was only allowed one or two, but I wanted more than that. And I could not make that jar not make noise when I tried to get them crackers out there. Mm-hmm. And Grandma Pettiford would make donuts, and the fire and the fuel for her stove was corn cobs. They burned corn cobs for the heat, and she made the best donuts. I thought all her food was good. She could fry the best fish. I guess because she was doing it. And we brought a cow back from Marion, hooked up behind the car. And the cow came home so Uncle Herbie could have some milk to drink. And Uncle Herbie grew to be 6'4" and a professor of languages at Kokomo University. And he taught over in Russia. And he went to the Air Force. He was in the Air Force. And Uncle Maurice was in the Army Air Force. And Uncle Joe was in the Army Air Force. The Army. He was in the Army. Uncle Herbie's the only one in the Air Force. And Uncle Maurice, they said they put him in the hottest place on earth, Fort Huachuca. I guess that was down there in Texas. He said it was scorching hot. But he did desk work. Most of his work was at the desk. But they all survived and came back, which was nice.
So your grandmother was Weaver, right?
Yeah. No, she was oh, yeah. Martha Ellen Weaver, Pettiford. Martha Ellen Weaver.
And your grandfather was Pettiford.
Yeah, Grandpa was Joe Pett. They called him Joe Pettiford. But he came from Beverly, England. How he got up there, I don't know. Now, my grandfather Miller, he just barely missed slavery. Him and his mother were sold together. But he was so little and frail, they sold the two of them together. But he never got to be a slave. By the time he grew up to be big enough to do anything, slavery was over with. And they moved on up from them slave states. There was 15 slave states in the south of the United States. I guess past the Mason and Dixon line. But the old master would whip my great-grandmother, I guess. My father's mother would whip her because she walked with her head high, which he didn't like. But they came from around the River Jordan. That's why Franklin is named Jordan. He's named after the River Jordan. And my grandfather would tell me he would run down that old river so fast and so hard that his shirt tail would just stick straight out in the back. Then he also saw a dog so big, but I don't think that was a dog. I believe it was a lion that he saw that was so big, being as he was in Africa at that particular time.
Did he remember anything about the Middle Passage?
I don't think so. You had almost had to answer. Do I remember? What was the Middle Passage?
Oh, just the trip from
Africa
over here.
Well, he knew that him and his mother were sold together. That's about it. And she worked in the house, I guess. And he had several brothers and a couple of sisters, I think. Uncle Irvin, Uncle Will, Uncle Estel. I don't know. But my grandfather remarried, and they didn't like their stepmother, so they all migrated up north every chance they got. And as far as I know, I can reach. My grandfather said he came from Gallatin, Tennessee. That's as far back as I can go.
So you think that's where the plantation was?
I think the plantation was farther down in the south. But they migrated up. They run off. They run away from them. You see, my grandma Pettiford, she came from the Cherokee Strip in North Carolina or South Carolina. You know where this Cherokee Strip is?
Yeah, I've heard about it.
She's more Indian than anything. But if you really want to dig, old Norma Carroll's got it all.
Yeah, I should probably talk to her, huh?
Yeah, well, sometimes she has to talk to me too. And dig my brain. I used to ride on my grandpa's back over to Plums. You know, you went every place walking. There wasn't nothing. If you could get 1 foot before the other, you walked. And I think my father drove a cab. But he had a cleaning and pressing shop. He was a deluxe cleaner. And my mother did the alterations and repairs for them. And that was right across the street from Crispus Attucks. I think, what was that? 1117 Northwest. I think it was, the address was 1117 Northwest, but it's empty now. It's just an empty lot, unless they built something here lately.
And when did your father pass?
1950. Must have been 1957, because Miss Franklin, he died after Miss Franklin. Your great grandmother Franklin. He died a year after her. And she died in 56, I believe. 55 or 56. And so he must have died in 57. And my mother died, what? Daryl was 12. When did September? I think it was September. Boy, I guess a person better write that stuff down. You sure will forget it. You think, well, how could I ever forget it? And you will. And of course, I can't believe that DJ laughed at the fact that I worked on an engine lathe at Lucas and Harold making the Nardin bomb site.
Yeah, so tell me about that. I didn't know about that.
10 hours a day, 6 days a week, 50 cents an hour. Hot dog, that was money. Plenty of money. I think we ended up with about $18 a week. I had them machines humming. I think that place was closed up. It used to be called Naval Avionics out on 21st in Arlington.
What exactly did you make when you worked there?
Well, we made parts. Well, how them parts and what them parts ended up being, I made screws and finished pieces, you know, used the calipers And I guess they put them together someplace else. We just made parts. But the Norden bomb sight is the one that they dropped on Hiroshima. It said you could. It was so precise that you could look down there and bomb a place in a pickle barrel or something like that. They bragged on how precise it was. It was so perfect. You hit your target without an inch of wiggle worm one way or the other. So that's what I did, and that's what tickled each DJ.
So this was all during the war, so there was probably a shortage of men. That's how you ended up in that situation.
Oh yeah, and Lavinia, she worked on the ship out in California, and she run into Sylvester out there.
Mm.
I think it was California. Oh my. But I can't remember the SS Eldon, I think. It was the ship he was on, SS Eldon.
Was he drafted?
No, he volunteered because he was going to be drafted.
Mm-hmm.
So he volunteered so that he had the choice of picking the Army or the Navy. So he chose to go jump the gun before he was drafted.
Mm-hmm.
And he was 18 at that time. And of course he wanted me to marry him at 18. Huh? I don't know about being married. And